like to share it with you. It's titled Soft. NaKeesa, smile. Because I don't want you walking around here looking evil like all these black women you see around you. The first time my dad said this to me, I was 8 years old. He didn't say that because he hated black women, but because he loved his daughter, and he wanted his little girl to just be able to be a kid. But I'm sure that he knew the first time he said this to me, and every time thereafter, that it wouldn't ever be possible for me to just be a kid. He knew that, and so did I. So his request for me to smile was very confusing. See, from the time I was born, from the moment I took my first breath, I was entered into a boot camp, and I was enrolled without having any say in the matter. This was a special kind of boot camp, not one where my parents had to go to a specific place to sign me up for anything or speak to a recruiter on my behalf. No, see, I just needed to be born black and assigned female at birth. The Black Girls Bootcamp, as I call it, had only one goal, and that was for me to learn how to be tough. Like in most other boot camps, there was no room for softness. However, unlike other boot camps, since I had no say in the matter, I just had to submit to the teachings, requirements, doctrine, and drills that were part of the program, no matter what. There were no breaks, there was no way to unenroll, and you couldn't even be discharged. It was a lifetime commitment, and little black girls like me had no choice. And no matter where I looked around me in my hometown area when I was growing up, unfortunately, my dad was right. Almost all of the black women who were in my life during my formative years rarely did ever smile. You see, they had gone through that same boot camp and carried with them all the burdens and stresses that came with it, and they passed on what they learned to me. It was drilled into me that I needed to be tough because this world would not allow me to have an easy or carefree life, even as a child. It was also instilled in me that every minute of every day, mentally, intellectually, psychologically, and physically, I had to be prepared to protect myself. In fact, when I was just 7 years old, I was told that I had to be ready to fight, physically fight anyone who threatened to physically harm me. Repeatedly, no, incessantly, I was told that it wasn't a matter of if something terrible was going to happen to me, it was just a matter of when. So when my dad wanted me to look pleasant, to be more inviting to the general public, that was in direct contrast to all of my training, and going around smiling was not going to keep me safe. I couldn't give off some unspoken message that I was super accessible. My life experience coupled with the Black Girls Bootcamp taught me that every single part of my life required that I always be on high alert. This reality did not lend itself to me as a black girl and then later as a black woman to being someone who could afford to smile a lot. And I sure couldn't be seen as being soft. In fact, part of the boot camp doctrine had me equating the word soft as being synonymous with the word weak. And even though the strong black woman identity is extremely harmful for people who look like me, I had no choice to be just that, to be strong, and in no way be seen as soft. I was further taught that I didn't have the luxury to just be human. It was expected that I be some superhuman version of myself, someone who always needed to be hyper-vigilant, hyper-aware, hyper-protective, and always ready to act. When dealing with micro and macroaggressions in multiple spaces, patriarchy, misogyny, various injustices, coupled with the racism that is interwoven into every aspect of life for me, they just existing require me to possess a level of strength that should be considered utterly unreasonable and unsustainable. But not for me, nor for every other person who looks like me. Dealing with one trauma to the next, whether indirect or direct, acute or chronic, there is never a break from this reality. So to cope with this intense existence, I created a very intentional self-care practice. And for years, it served me very well. But eventually, it became clear that self-care alone just wasn't enough. And one day, out of the blue, I had the realization that what was missing is that I also needed to embrace softness. To say that this revelation was a surprise to me would be an understatement. But I had to accept that no amount of self-care alone was going to be enough. The problem was there was no guidance or manual or program that existed for how to accomplish this. So I had to figure it out on my own. But because of the programming I received in the Black Girls Bootcamp, coupled with the reality of my life as a black woman, I didn't know how to put my hypervigilance around self-protection or toughness aside, ever, not even for a minute. Even in times when I didn't have to be tough or strong, feeding the toughness that the Black Girls Bootcamp had ingrained in me provided me with a measure of safety, security, and protection. So I was extremely apprehensive to begin to explore the possibility of embracing softness. Many would undoubtedly see it as a sign of weakness, and I was sure would immediately try to take advantage of me. So not only was it scary, but it was super risky for me to show any type of softness. But something had to give. I needed to discover how to access the softness inside of me and balance it with still being able to protect myself. Softness and toughness had to somehow coexist. For starters, I began practicing accessing my softness through meditation, yoga, being still, and daydreaming. This journey, which I'm still learning to navigate, is one that I've had to engage in completely with the same amount of focus and intensity that was required while I was enrolled in the Black Girls Bootcamp of my youth. Though this is still very much new, I've also found it to be truly magical and pure and healthy, and I've come to know that embracing it, my softness, does not mean that I cannot also protect myself, because I'll always have to do that as a Black woman in this world. But from now on, I will protect myself while being tough, strong, and soft all at the same time.
And we have so many wonderful published writers in here. Please, we'll have all their names, so please look them up. NaKeesa's